Hey guys, this is Brett Donahue with Jonathan in the back room monitoring me so that when I say something wrong, he can hit pause. Hopefully, I don't do that. Look at that. You know, this is the first time I've seen the Lionsgate logo on the front of this movie. Um, we delivered it to Saban, and then Lionsgate got involved, and there's Saban coming up right here. So I'm excited to sit with you. If you're listening to this and you're not my mother, then I don't know why you're listening. No, I'm kidding. No, but obviously you want to hear about the making of The Old Way, and I would like to provide you with some anecdotal stories about Mr. Nicolas Cage, which is probably why you're listening. There's Capstone Pictures. Thanks to Capstone and Intercut for financing this movie. There's the logo for Mr. Cage, Saturn Films. Michael Wolff, that is the writer, Carl. I just did this logo for this movie, the concept being kind of the trial by fire burning the basically, you know, trial by fire, meaning like the perfect gold and the silver come out of the chaos of our business. That's the subtext. Intercut Capital, of course, I just thank Brian and Mike and the guys for financing this. I tell you what, guys, so I just sat through a 2-hour interview that I'm sure will be cut down to 10 minutes. So I'll be repeating some of the stories that I just told, and hopefully they don't bore you. But this script came to me from one of the producers, and I happened to be in Dallas, Texas. I raised 3 daughters, 26, 24, 22-year-olds in Los Angeles, and I had just moved my middle daughter, Brooke, to Dallas, and I happened to be staying with her at her apartment, and this script was sent to me, and I read it at 3 a.m. and couldn't put it down, and woke up the next day and said, all right, we have to make this movie. As a guy that grew up some of my years on a Texas ranch, I have an affinity for the Westerns, and this script resonated with me as a father of 3 daughters, as I mentioned, because of the relationship between the father, Colton Briggs, and his daughter, Brooke.
It's God's will that I stand here today.
We settled on this location. The producers had known Richie. Richie is another director who had built this town for his movie. And we're the second film to have shot there. I think what I've heard is now, I guess there's been another 5 or 6, but this is outside of Livingston and Paradise Valley that we're shooting. There's Dale, and Dale is my stunt coordinator. And I threw him in there because I didn't have anyone that day, and the guys that showed up couldn't say the line, so I threw Dale in there.
I was able to open up Clark's Mercantile and Trade, but I was able to lure in the railroad. Now I know that many of you...
But this, anyway, Yellowstone Ranch is where we're shooting this, and it was a brand new set. This is the second time that has been featured on film. This is Nicolas Cage's first Western. As he said to me on set, he's like, you know, Brett, this is my first Western. And I said, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I'm so proud and honored to be directing your first Western. And as you will see, and supposedly you've probably already seen this movie if you're listening to me now, his performance is impeccable. He's a remarkable actor and a consummate gentleman. And he came and showed up and delivered far beyond anything I could have imagined. That right there is Dean Armstrong. That's the father of Brooke.
Yes.
Who is played by Ryan Armstrong, and Brooke is the daughter of Colton Briggs. Dean is a known actor himself, Canada and in the U.S., and has an acting school for kids that does not explain the extraordinary talent of his daughter, because Ryan is born with that talent, let me tell you right there. And then Corby was the guy being hung, and Boyd, one of my best friends right there, came in to do me a cameo, which is so nice. The difficulty of indie cinema is, I'm sure the people listening to that are in independent cinema, is that you never have enough time and you never have enough money. So this opening sequence, I staged and shot listed and worked for about a month and a half to kind of figure out the shots that I wanted. As I'm guessing, but I think it was about 98 setups, maybe 100 setups that I wanted. And I only had a day and a half to shoot it. And because of the speed and the preparation of which Sion, Michelle, my DP, and I prepared, we were able to do that. And everybody was all hands on deck. Normally in these independent kind of situations, I sit there with the production crew and I tell them, look, we're going to make a 35-day movie. And this wound up being 18 days. The last one was 15. It's not by choice, I can assure you. And no one believes me, and then they show up on set and realize I was serious, because I want to be able to try to capture all the shots that I would normally get in 30 days in whatever time that's allotted. I'm pausing here because I was waiting for the English horn that you'll hear now. Our young McAllister's horn here. So Andrew Morgan Smith, I got through Brian Wright, my producer investor, and I had interviewed him, and we discussed the music in great detail. I happen to have had a full ride on French horn to college, and so I am a musician, and I love the orchestra, and I think that you can make or break a movie based on the music. I mean, listen to that. Oh, that's swell. So anyway, again, you know, you run out of money in these movies, and then you're like, how on earth are we going to be able to pull this off? And I find this amazing artist, composer, Andrew, in New Orleans. And he says to me, you know, Brett, I have a favor that's owed to me from the Budapest Orchestra there in Hungary. And I kind of almost fell over, because one of my favorite cities in the world and where I've lived for at least 2 years of my life is Budapest, Hungary. I've even taken my daughters to hear them, and it was Andrew and the Budapest Orchestra that give you this unbelievably remarkable score that is certainly not something that should have been afforded. Carrie Knupp, the hardest thing about this movie, when I first read it, I thought the obstacles would be to cast the role of Brooke and the role of Ruth. Why is that? Well, a 12-year-old actress that can be a Natalie Portman or a Jodie Foster from Taxi is pretty difficult to find. So I'll talk about her in a second, but Carrie, the same thing. Like, there was, of course, hundreds and hundreds of auditions, and one of the producers had brought Carrie up to me. I did not know her prior to this. Yes. I wanted Ruth to encapsulate power, strength of the open range in the West, and yet be someone that the audience can fall in love with and understand how on earth a gunslinger like Colton Briggs could alter his ways and fall in love. And Carrie encapsulates that far beyond, to be honest, even what I thought I could achieve. Because I think it's so important. If you don't fall in love with Ruth as an audience member, then you won't understand why Colton Briggs changed his entire life for her.
Then the two of you had best get going so you're not late. Brooke!
Carrie has some kind of sensibility. It reminds me of Jessica Chastain. I think it's just because Jessica is one of my other favorite actresses, but she has this presence about her that's just so grounded and real. And there's Ryan.
Thank you.
Ryan Kara Armstrong is currently starring in the next Star Wars. She was, of course, in Firestarter for Universal. She was the lead in American Horror Story, so she's got quite a career ahead of her. And after hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, I would say 500 auditions, as I was just able to articulate in my interview previously, the last audition to come through, and I'm quite serious, was Ryan. And her audition was so impeccable that it could have went in the movie. And when I later met her father, Dean, who plays Clark, that I pointed out earlier, he's like, you know, Brett, like, she's been working so much, and we're going to take a month off. And she didn't want to work, and I read the script. And I was like, man, you know, I'm the father that I can't withhold good material from my daughter. How beautiful is this vista? Montana, baby. That's the Paradise Valley in Montana. And it's a character in this movie, clearly, and I'll come back to that. But Dean was basically saying that he let Ryan read it, and she's like, you know, Dad, I connect so much with this character. I have to play this role. And her audition was worthy of print. Could have been in this film. The difficulty, of course, and is not immediately known, is that, you know, Colton Briggs and Brooke are on the spectrum.
Need to walk home now.
And so they lack emotion and they lack the ability to understand. I interpreted for the deaf growing up, and I have a great affinity for the disabled. And the last movie I made that I'm really proud of, 23 movies ago, is called Music Within, and that was about a guy that, Richard Pimentel, who helped start the Americans with Disabilities Act. So part of my gravitation toward this film was not just as a father-daughter, but it was kind of showcasing, if you will, like characters we haven't seen in the West. 1862, this is actually 1882, 20 years later. And we're seeing for the first time, think about it, man, I'm such a Western aficionado, and we've never seen in a Western kind of really maybe the psychological background of why a killer is a killer that has no emotion. And it is very explainable and plausible that they're on the spectrum and they don't have the ability to find that emotion.
There and read a book.
And that's what I like, is that we see through this storyline two characters that are so far apart. As you notice, I designed this with Xian so that everything in the first act, it's really wide, right? Like we just saw Nick and Ryan on the front porch, and they're far apart. Here, they're far apart. Every time we see them, when we first met her, the distance between Colton Briggs and Brooke at the beginning of this movie represents, and the wide landscapes represent kind of their relationship. And as we go through the course of the film, it begins to get tighter and tighter and tighter until we get to the climax and the end of the film, which is obviously in an alley and then a shootout on the small kind of avenue of the city. Skylar Stone, man, what an amazing guy. I've become really good friends with him. He's a known comic. And
as I mentioned before, the apples taste like shit anyhow.
What I love about this scene is that it really is showcasing and allowing us to understand how much Colton Briggs hates his life. I mean, can you imagine Clint Eastwood or Chuck Bronson? You know what I mean? That's the point, right? He's a killer. He falls in love. He gives up his old way of life, and then he's subjugated to sit in Briggs Mercantile and deal with the likes of this young man who still lives with his mother.
She don't think she can sift them all out this time.
How many pounds?
Tesla is remarkable. That's my production designer. She's local to Montana. I have people that I am typically loyal to, but I give everyone the opportunity. On an indie film, you try to hire local when you can. And when I met her, I was so impressed by her, not just her intellect, but her artistic integrity. This, if you don't know, which you may or may not, like this set is like a $30 million movie set. And I'm not exaggerating, actually. I mean, just look at how beautiful it is.
Flour.
And let's just say for $3.50, she pulled it off. And when I walked in there, I was like, oh my God.
Thank you, Mr. Briggs. Hope to see you.
The beginning of the movie is so important.
Madam.
Not just the acting, not just the location, but the set decoration obviously all plays into it with the underscore of the music here.
What?
That man, Mr. Jeffries, I caught him taking some jelly beans and he put them back.
He put them back.
I love the scene because you're learning about these characters.
Next time he's in my store.
And in their Vulcan way, they're distant and not emotional. And of course, you're figuring out now that Brooke is OCD.
What do you want?
And it's those little nuances, right, that you start to figure out, wait a minute, what's going on here? Which again, to me, I mean, I think that these characters could be placed in any genre or any kind of story, but it makes it a little special and I think unique in the sense that I haven't seen these characters in a Western. Andrew and I discussed this music in depth, and this scene really is, I take my time. Some people like it, some people don't. it happens to be that the last interviewer 2 hours ago was like, wow, I love the fact that you're taking your time on this scene to set up kind of the headspace of Brooke. And I love that he noticed that, because I'm not sure that all of you might like it. It certainly could be perceived as a little long. But I love this music here because it gets you into her headspace and you realize that she's OCD and there's something unique and special about her. Wait, why is she separating the colors of the jelly beans? I personally, I tell everyone I have ADHD and I'm a little eccentric and I'm a little odd, and and the older I get, I don't care, and I just talk sometimes left, right, or center, and I literally like to tell people that I think it's a superpower, like, and that's another thing that gravitates me to this movie, in that sense of like what the world might think is a dysfunction can be actually used for your advantage. Oh, so I swear to you, I'm being honest. This location I had in my mind, right, when I read the script. I was like, all right, I see the barn in the back, and I have this cabin on the right, and I want mountains in the back. And I get to Montana, and what I do as a director, because I'm indie guy, without getting paid, I go to my location. I live on the road. I literally live in hotels, and from movie to movie, I just travel around the world and go to different locations and try to get there early enough that I can meet the local population and be friends, and like have them become part of the vision, if you will, like fill my passion. And it allows me that time before a location manager, before a location scout, right, to be able to like sit and meet people and say, hey, I have this vision of this location, and this is what I want. And thank God, man, like this location, this homestead for Colton Briggs is exactly as I pictured it. Mr. Abraham Benrubi and Nola Grow in the background. Boots is played by, of course, Shiloh Fernandez. I'm really happy that I will repeat a story in case you might have seen it, but I say it again, that when I first was on the phone with Mr. Nicolas Cage, I was talking to him about one of my very good friends, and I say it in relation to his authentic acting and his talent, not to drop names, but Philip Seymour Hoffman and the Labyrinth Theater and Yul Vasquez and all those guys on the East Coast, like, he was a very good friend of mine, God rest his soul. And I approach as a actor, a former actor, but sometimes maybe I still do that. I'm an actor myself. So I approach any project as a left and right brain kind of person. And so when I first got on the phone with Nick, I said, listen, man, Philip Seymour Hoffman was a very good friend of mine, and I'm not saying that for any other reason than to say this. I want his level and yours, sir, Mr. Nicolas Cage's level of acting and professionalism in every single role in this movie, even if the person has one line. He's like, really? And I said, yes, I'm not kidding. And that was many a hard-fought battle over many months. And that battle, what is that battle? Why do I say that? It's because this is show business, right? And business is 90% and show is 10%. So it's always the balance to make sure you have the right amount of celebrity / name to make sure that you have the balance of like recoupment of the money. And of course you have Mr. Nicolas Cage, but everyone wants as many people as they can get. So all that to say that for each of these roles, I was trying my best to find the perfect actor. Mr. Clint Howard I know from Music Within. I had known him for some time. And when I read it, I did not know that he'd grown out a beard. And I called him and I said, oh my God, Clint, I have this role for you and you have to play it because I'm trying to do this homage to the old school Western, and I want you to be the Civil War guy who's part of this gang. And then he sends me his photo and he has that white beard. I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And Farrah West, I love her, man. That's my casting director. We would spend 18 hours a day probably on the phone. She also is part of the team of the passionate, remarkable humans that came to collaborate. Hello, can I say that word?
No sense running off and hiding.
she was part of the team. And ultimately, she brought me Shiloh, actually. And so each of these roles, you know, I wanted to have kind of this interesting, because they're small, right? They're supporting roles. But I wanted each role to have kind of their own significance and gravitas, if you will.
You'll see we don't got any guns.
And for Boots, I'd come up with this concept actually early on that I wanted a Boots, which again is Shiloh, the guy that just pointed. I wanted him to be the guy that wanted to take over the gang. And so it gave it that extra kind of like emotional content that gave a smaller character a little more weight. You know, that's not easy, guys. Like, that's another thing. Working with horses, period, costumes. This particular location was 38 minutes, I want to say, from base camp. It's pretty... I mean, I'm saying this to myself. I'm just so surprised what we pulled off. But that falling horse came from a gentleman in Texas, and that was one of 2 takes, and I think the second take there was an issue, and I just went with the first one. So it's pretty amazing because even the horses have to act, if you will. So McAllister Noah,
Quickly now.
my prerequisite for that role was that I did not want him to play the over-the-top bad guy. I want the audience to have empathy for the young boy whose father's killed, obviously in the prologue, and to understand, which to me is what the quintessential American movie, right, is the Western. And why is that? I think it's because it's like man and woman against nature, right? This is so pre-technology, and we're trying to find our way, we're trying to find our integrity, and we're trying to figure out our path.
Did you?
And it could change at any moment. So here's McAllister. Of course he's a bad guy. You kill my dad. Are you serious? And I want us to feel for him to a certain degree and then feel guilty for having felt for him.
Colton Briggs.
I love this scene, Carrie. She does such a great job.
We're like family, me and him.
When I have family or friends that have never been to set, sometimes they'll come and visit. And
Boys are in a
for many of you maybe that don't know about filmmaking, what I was going to say is like people will come to set and they're like, oh my God, this is so much work. I'm like, well, what do you think it was? Like, I don't know. For the filmmakers that are listening, meaning aspiring and the people that don't know or don't care, what's so hard, right, about filmmaking is that for all of this setup, like we've had to plan and prep and production design and set dress and costume. And then on the day, right, in this scene, I've got probably 22 setups in this scene. And for each setup, the actors have to do the entire scene. And most people don't realize that. They think it's like a soap opera or a 3-camera episodic television show where you have multiple cameras going. On this particular show, I have 2 cameras going. And I prefer that, to be honest. I used to be 1-camera guy. I think now, and of course I'm not the big guys with the studio, they have like 6 cameras sometimes. You can't afford that, obviously, on a small movie. But I like to have 2 so that I can kind of sometimes cut and match the emotion and the moment of the actors when it actually hits. We call it the magic.
You were here.
And if you've got 2 overs, sometimes it's easier to match those kind of sparks if you've got 2 cameras versus having to have an actor recreate it. Mr. Cage and I had many a conversation about the art and the craft of being a thespian. I think it's maybe underrated a little in our day and age, and it really is a lot of work. And I think people might disparage. You know, the world's changed a lot, so it's fame and money, but it's so much work if you're a true thespian and you study your craft and like you have to get inside this guy's head, and then you have to deal with all the crew around you, and then still be present, and then still articulate the memorization of these lines in a real and truthful moment. And it is a very difficult task. And that, my friends, right there, Nick Searcy, I've known for 20 years, is the epitome of what I was just talking about.
Hey, you guys.
A man that can be present in the moment and say a line that's so believable that it's not acting.
Just you folks home? I want to apologize for my man. We didn't realize that no one was home, and
I love this. I want to apologize. All right, watch this.
I apologize again. My name is U.S. Marshal Franklin Jarrett.
I know who you
It's
are.
one of my favorite beats right here. Boom.
Where's Ruth?
Do I know you?
I'm afraid you have me at a loss, sir. Do I know you?
What I love about filmmaking is not just the collaboration, but these little moments. Briggs? You know, that little subtle nuance, right? Is like, we know so much. It's so weighted. Briggs?
I apologize, little lady. That language is...
Because immediately this marshal's like, wait, I have to tell the guy that I knew as a mass murdering gunfighter that his wife's dead.
Well, that is a good thing. Man needs a family. It grounds him, evens him out. That is
Interesting anecdote there. We had bear watchers. This was toward the end of summer. This is right next to the Yellowstone Park, and this particular area, this particular location is, I think, 3 miles from the entrance to Yellowstone. So the mountains right behind Nicolas Cage on this right there, there's so many bears, and like we would show up and they're like, there's a lot of bears out here. So we had, as part of the crew, there was literally a guy and his dog that was on bear watch, and it was necessary because, of course, we're out in the wilderness, which the bears own, and we certainly don't.
little lady. I had Smiley heat up some of that condensed milk and put a little brown sugar in it. It's good. Make you.
We shot this toward, as you can tell, at the end of the day. And going back to what I was saying earlier, that some people don't know is like you shoot this for hours, like this little 3-minute scene. You're shooting all the different, between the wardrobe change and actors go to the bathroom, and then you got to move the camera, and you got to reset the lighting. So your lighting in the natural setting in the exterior like this changes. So
You meet a lot of people in this business.
this is one of
There's a lot of times
several lighting issues I had with the movie, in the sense that had to be fixed in the color correction at the end. So as you look over Nick Searcy, Marshall Jarrett's shoulder there, and then you look over Brooks, I had to kind of try to balance that night. And hopefully you're watching the movie and none of that matters. I'm just kind of telling you some of the things that we deal with on the back end of post and trying to fix something that so it's not glaring. Because you start shooting and the sun's up and the sky's blue, and then you end shooting and it's black back there. So then you try to find that balance in between it.
And I don't say this lightly, but your daddy was a violent man. I seen him shoot 3 cowboys one time. Now, it was a fair fight.
Your daddy was a violent man.
His blood raised an ounce. I can't say he was a criminal. I don't know that, but I can say that he
Isn't it interesting that,
I would call a good man.
see, we're learning about that as an audience, but so is Brooke. And I think that
Why are you telling me this?
from the perspective, the original script, Carl did such an amazing job in the script. One of the reasons I liked it, it was just written more as a play, if you will. This scene, for instance, was probably 2.5 times longer. And I like to shoot what's on the page and then kind of fix it in editorial, in the sense of letting, because you don't know, like, ultimately, there's the script you read, there's the script you shoot, and then there's the movie you make. And The movie you make is only based on the footage that's in the can, and you do the best you can to make the best seamless
I haven't
story
seen my father hold a
that
gun.
makes sense
It's because he's a good man now.
and doesn't bore the audience, hopefully. So, you know,
You carry
the adage,
Are you
sometimes you have to kill your babies, which may not be appropriate to say, but I mean, that is an old school adage of referring
Mom's
to
dead now.
kind of killing the things that you love artistically. So you might love this 6-minute scene, but at the end of the day, in the scope of the film, you're like, all right, what are the important elements and what do we need to get across? So this is one of the scenes, both of these scenes. They played long and felt long. And as a director, to be truthful, I kind of sometimes feel, oh, I hope they still don't feel that way.
Would you like
But
to
hopefully
words?
you're invested by this point in the movie that you care about the information you're learning. And I think it's powerful because you're learning it from the marshal that's terrified of this gunslinger.
Them fellas
And then you're seeing it and hopefully hearing it from Brooke's perspective through her ears as a young girl. Like, wait a minute, are you telling this young girl that her dad's a killer? What?
I reckon
So that to me, hopefully, is, you know,
we're only a few hours behind them.
making it interesting on multiple levels.
Good idea where they're going.
Tell me the names of the men who did this. Tell me where they're going.
No, sir. I don't think I can do that. I reckon it's been a few years since the world has seen the old Colton.
So this scene, for instance, it had a lot more of the history of America, and I kept what I could because I loved it in the sense of kind of showing you that that's what a Western is about. Like, this is before we've established the government that we, of course, currently have. But, you know, I mean, it was, why do they call it the Wild West? That's what I love about it, is that each man is figuring out the law into himself, right? And at this particular point of this movie, which is 1882,
This year
those laws have been established, and they're establishing in each of these territories the way the law works. And so he goes into depth, Marshall, in this scene to describe a lot of that. And I've cut a lot out, but I've kept enough that I think it resonates that, you know, that's not the world anymore. You can't just go around killing people. We have laws now. There's judicial process.
we will take them to trial and they will hang. I promise that to you. Take care of your daughter. As long as that little girl is alive, there's no room for vengeance in your life.
As long as that little girl's alive, there's no room for vengeance. Setting up the next scene, of course, where Colton has to battle internally with the old Colton Briggs and the man he became for the woman he loved.
What do we do now?
Go to bed.
So this scene we shot at dusk or magic hour, and it needed to be dark, obviously, to match. So what you don't know, and I'm about to tell you a little secret. The interior of this barn, every time we see it, is the interior of a different barn in the location at the homestead. So this interior is not that interior. That's only the exterior at that homestead. And when I come to here, that's the interior at the Yellowstone Ranch. So each of the towns that are present in this movie are all shot at the same location and then redressed, including the interior of this barn. This interior was a lot larger, was obviously a lot more friendly because it's a legitimate set. It's not a barn that you got to move everything out of. And so that is movie magic, my friends, and it's really cool because, you know, you basically, through editorial and preparation, match the exterior and interior. And I was very, very fortunate that the exterior of that barn at the homestead matched actually the exterior of the other one, but the one at Yellowstone was just much larger. So, of course, we owe you, as I call back to the prologue, when Colton Briggs says to Dean, "You owe me more." And that's the whole point, right? McAllister says, "You owe me more." And here we are. And Colton is flashing back pretty quickly back into his old skin here. And it's a very stark, kind of dramatic moment, isn't it? I presume you've seen this if you're listening to me. As the father goes to pull the trigger on his own daughter. And again, I think that this is such a very, it's a very pivotal moment because look at her. Mama wouldn't like you, but look, they're the same person. And if you haven't noticed, what does she say consistently? Mama wouldn't like you. Mama, like even in her astute intellectual, like spectrum way, she knows that her father loves her mama, and that's how she manipulates her dad. And then she's also not even scared of the gun because she does not have emotion. And that's what draws me to this script. These two humans do not have emotion and then find it on a journey of revenge or a vengeance of the long lost love loss, right? So it's so amazing. So this, just so you know, this, as I said, was a very famous Marlboro-like location owned by a private individual that he rents out, I think, regularly for a very large sum of money for people to go on Airbnb to. And, of course, we couldn't burn it down, so this is a visual effect, of course. That fire in the reverse is real. And then, thankfully, technology has come far enough that we can make fire now that looks realistic. I tend to always err, if you'll notice, like, I'm not over the top. I really, really love Tarantino, and I love when the squibs, like, blow up as if it's, like, 3 people died. But in this particular film, based on money and just my sensibility of trying to keep it grounded, I wanted everything contained. If you'll notice, the beginning and the end of the movie, I use squibs, and then some of the other stuff is CG. But I wanted stuff a little more down, I was going to say down to earth, but just practical and kind of grounded, you know?
But as soon as I finish what I have to do,
I'm jumping ahead, but of course, when he kills
we'll replace
Abraham and Ruby, Big Mike, I didn't want that on camera. And I had the whole prosthetic standing by, but I was like, no, use your imagination. It's so much better if the audience imagines it, because we can't. I think even on a big budget, sometimes you're like, oh, you're a little let down because your imagination would have made that kill and or fantastical event so much greater.
You gonna whoop me?
You gonna whoop me? So I'll tell you guys, a highlight of my career happened on this scene because the fast pace and the point at which you're trying to pull a crew together, and I'm not able to use my crew. This is post-COVID, right at the end of it, which is very difficult to find people, and everyone's trying to work because everyone's coming back to work, right? So I don't have my ADs that I use, and so I had fired my AD, and I'm on this day, day 4, I shot this scene, and I don't have an AD, so I'm the director and the AD, and I'm trying to fix everything, and Mr. Cage comes to set, and he observes. This is the 4th day now, mind you, of filming. And I'm ADing my own set. For those of you that don't know, the first AD runs the set. They kind of like talk to all the departments. They make sure all the equipment's there. They pull all the organization together. They're like the through line and the bread line of like how everything happens. And on set, they're kind of like making sure everything's going on. So like when the director has to do that, of course, that's an egregious responsibility. So Mr. Cage comes to set and he's like, you know,
that little girl.
if Brett has to AD his own set,
How do you mean?
then I'll be my own stand-in.
Mama had just been killed.
And graciously and humbly, he stands in for himself
Not a tear on her face.
in honor and respect of the work ethic that he has. And it was just, I was just so honored and touched by that because he certainly didn't have to do that, Mr. Nicolas Cage, the movie star, but he understood that this was an indie, and we all pull our weight and wear multiple hats, and I just thank him for it. He's a remarkable human. So this scene is shot at the Story Ranch. The Story Ranch is now run by Nelson Story, and that ranch is, I think it started with 1 million acres. I don't know where it is now, but that is the family that Lonesome Dove was based on. This is, I want to say, it's in Paradise Valley and about 20 minutes from Yellowstone, going north. And I'm going to tell the story, guys, because why not, right? I can't be sued for it, but ultimately, I saw some photos from this location. The film commissioner had sent me. And I was like, okay, I got to shoot there. And they're like, oh, you can't. I'm like, what do you mean I can't? Oh, no. You can't shoot there. They've had movies there. And Mr. Story doesn't want any movies there anymore.
You see Briggs?
Sure does. I don't know what he looks like.
Pardon me as I take a sip. So listen, I call Mr. Nelson, and I don't expect a return phone call, and I'm told not to expect a return phone call. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. I'm like, oh my God, I got to shoot at this location. I don't know that anyone maybe understands the difficulty. In every movie, I mean, obviously a location is so critical. It's so critical because it's one of the characters of the movie. Like, you have to be in the right location. Obviously in a Western, in the genre picture. And as a person who is not a CG guy, in the sense that I love being practically sitting in my location, I have to find the right one. So 4 months of searching. Long story short, Mr. Nelson calls me back on the day 4, and I give him my pitch. And I say, look, man, this is Nicolas Cage's first Western ever. And we're talking about a father and a daughter here. And you know, they're actually, honestly, what's most amazing is, like, this is characters that are on the spectrum, and we've never actually made a movie like this before, certainly in a Western. And so, like, I have to shoot at your location. And at the end of this call, with my impassioned plea, he goes, you know, Brett, come see me tomorrow at 10 a.m. and I'll show you around the ranch, and, like, we'll talk. And God bless Nelson's Story, because even this is on Nelson's ranch right here. And after 8 hours, I'm told I can't go see his place. I can't shoot on his place. The last filmmaker that went on his place had a shotgun in his face. And then I'm there sitting with the man, and 8 hours of conversation and chilling and, like, scouting his ranch. He's like, you know, Brett, you know, I'm going to let you shoot here, and God bless him, man, because, like, it makes the movie. A lot of these amazing scenescapes are on his ranch, and of course, set the aesthetic.
No, Buff. I'm with you.
I mean, even, of course, the ambush scene. Oh, let's go back there.
If that lawman stops.
I'll say it the nice way. Let's just say we lost, quote unquote, 7 hours of footage on one of my crane shots for that ambush scene.
You got something to say, old man?
Quote unquote, lost. We're not going to go there. So I had to reshoot a lot of it, but I couldn't shoot a lot of it, of course. I'm happy with that scene. I'm not complaining about that scene, but of course it was covered, and there was so many more epic shots that were planned and actually shot for that scene. The reason I bring it up is because it came to mind, but more to the point is, like, without being able to shoot at the Story Ranch, I wouldn't have had that. And it is actually a very, very big kind of crevice, maybe even, you know, the distance is further than maybe some of the traditional old school Westerns, but I loved it. I love the fact that these guys are, like, pulled into this valley and then ambushed.
Can't you think of another way to stop him?
So, you know, throughout the scene, throughout the movie, obviously, Colton looks at his watch. This happens multiple times in front of the school, in his homestead, and here. And I love the whole resolution. And of course, the payoff is that his wife is there. And so between the daughter, Brooke, saying to him, you know, Mama wouldn't like that, and then him looking at that watch, like he really is, you know, that is his grounding, if you will.
People in this world?
His sponsor, if you will, like from an addict's point of view. And I don't mean that disrespectful. I mean it like amazing. That here Colton Briggs is this gunfighter, falls in love, and like the person that grounds him is the woman that is dead, and now he still needs her. And how amazing is this scene?
You're gonna have to figure out how to act like that.
You want to fit in? You have to act.
You remember last summer when the Parsons daughter died? Do you remember how his wife cried? Wah, wah.
Wah,
A
wah.
little louder. Wah, wah. My baby, my baby.
Wah, wah. My baby, my baby.
I'll have to do.
That'll have to do. I laughed out loud when I read this, and I love the humor that is spread throughout, that
Wah,
is grounded in the
Okay, little girl.
my baby.
in the reality of who these people are. You know, I mean, listen to her. Wow, she doesn't know how to cry.
You're getting off that horse.
Of course, what happens at the end? She's crying over the death of her dad.
You should have gone, Mark. He looked pretty bad.
It's just such a profound arc. I mean, again, that's what draws me to this movie, is like just the journey that these characters take is very profound. I don't know how to cry at the death of my mother. I don't know how to fake cry. So you can like get this guy off his horse. And then quite naturally,
Sorry, guys.
through the course of the film and getting to know her father and recognizing that he also was born dead inside, right?
But whatever you think you're doing, you need to.
They both find their ability
Especially that Rossi and bring it.
to find emotion that they've never had before. Him love for his daughter, her love, and also the ability to even cry.
Do what she says, Greg.
I will blow this little girl's brains all over this valley. Do you hear me?
Adam Lazar White is a friend of mine, very talented actor, Harvard grad, and a known Hollywood acting coach. He's so grounded. I love Adam. And again, like every person that I was trying to find to cast in this movie, I was discussing with them just how
I'm gonna try to do it like him next
I
time.
want to try to do it like him. I paused because that's so funny.
Both of you put your hands behind your back.
It's just a funny moment. I'm going to try to do it like him next time. I'm not sure if
Enough wood?
you, listener,
Needs to burn.
are one that cares necessarily, and I don't say that even disparagingly. I don't know that you care about their performance. Maybe you just love
Faster.
watching a story and you're not so enthralled by performance or care. Again, I have my daughters that have grown up that, you know, the younger generation watches YouTube, so they don't care necessarily about the aesthetic of how it's shot or how bad particularly the picture looks or the performance. But I find in my own life, just that is who I am as an artist. Like I really want to try with all my heart to cast the best actor and get the best performance and find the meaning of that scene and to capture it in an aesthetic way that is pleasing but that complements the story.
That is trouble that you have.
This scene, we had a rainstorm come in through that valley. So this is the same valley in the Story Ranch that the ambush occurred in. And a rainstorm came in. It was a deluge. We should have built the ark, and I'm not kidding. It was that hardcore. So everyone's like standing under tents and stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? So we waited, and then we shot the horses coming into the valley, and then we went to this.
Correct.
I think because you're listening to me, what I want to articulate
Is this dry enough?
is the appreciation. You know, I find that
We'll be ready to start.
in our world, everyone's a critic. And I say that in this respect. Like, I so appreciate, you know, when a young filmmaker, like I might not appreciate their movie. I might not. I mean, maybe it's not my style. Maybe it's not my type, whatever. But I'm like, God bless you. Are you kidding me? You made your movie. You did one of the most impossible things. The average human, right? They don't understand like the number of complicated issues that you have to fit every round peg in a square hole in order to make a movie. You have to fix all of these guys' schedules. You have to pull together a crew of 100 people. You have to find the locations. You have to, I mean, you know what I mean? It's just so many different aspects. So it's like at the end of each movie, I'm like, oh, okay, you don't like it. Who cares? I did it. You know what I mean? It's like, I tell people sometimes in interviews, I'm like, yeah, I made a lot of bad movies, but I had to pay for my kids' life. And I'm very, 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 very proud to say that this movie, as hard as it was to make, that I'm just really artistically proud of it. Like, I want it to stand as something that I stand behind and am proud of because of the performances and the crew and what they did, man. They went above and beyond. That's another thing is, you know, when you're working 15, 16 hours a day and then you don't sleep, sleep 2-3 hours a night, you're just so appreciative of people that want to jump on that ship with you and follow you as a captain and believe in something.
It's like Mama's rabbit trap.
Even when you feel like the ship is sinking. Which on this show and all indie shows, you know, you wake up one day, you're like, wait, are we going to drown? Or are we going to make it? And inevitably, the only reason you do make it is because of those people around you.
But these men are not walking out of this
And certainly, I had amazing people around me in this crew, in this cast.
And there's no James McAllister, no Mexican girl, no Gang of Four. I will come back here and I will kill these two men before you can return with help. And then I will wait for you. And no matter how many men you bring back with you,
So it's coming up, another little thing that no one will know, unless you're listening to me right now, is that this is exactly what I was saying. Like, remember the weather, that we had problems on this day. This is a different day, different location. If you're watching the film, I don't think that you'll ever know, but I am telling you as an insider, I was kind of tripping. I was like, oh my Lord, we've run out of day. Now I can't go back into the Deep Valley. So what you don't know is, as I said, like, I think the Astoria Ranch may be 1 million acres originally. Maybe it's only like, I don't know, 100,000 now. But that location that we were just at is, I don't know, we got to take trucks and dune buggies and four-wheelers back in there, and it takes you 18 to 20 minutes to get back in there. And if you start thinking about all the logistics involved in that, with the crew, the cast, the equipment, the G&E, the horses, like all that is driven all the way back into this ranch. So because of the weather, I had to call it that day. And then we literally just picked this location on a different day to finish that scene, which of course was long. And that is another one of those movie magic things where you hope people like the movie enough to not care or know. In fact, the scene that I was just referring to is across the street from this location. Again on Astoria Ranch. And that shed, what did he say to me? It's original. I think he said it's over 100 years old.
Well, let's crack her open and see what we got. Oh, Lordy.
And certainly being in the basement of this 100 and whatever year old edifice, it felt like it because the dung, I guess they kept, so true story, they would burn dung and they'd keep stuff underneath and burn it to like heat in this era. So when we went in there to first scout, like all of the dirt in there is dung from 100 years, like from all the different animals, because it was like their heating source.
That's okay. That's why you got me.
So I had to clean it out. Well,
My brains know that.
to be fair, I didn't.
Jail. We're gonna have to lay low for a while, at least a year or so. And any of you boys got any idea what kind of money?
So yeah, the point of that is obviously that we're kind of breathing in some LA air, if you will, in that basement there. Another thing is that we were shooting this at the end of the day, so the light coming through that door,
I will tell you this. That
it
money-
went from light to dark. So this is one of 5 instances in the movie where in the post-color correction, I had to balance out the light. So that right there, for instance, that is a color box that we put on that door to make that bright because that was dark.
part of the plan.
Should we wait for him? And
That right there is a color box to make that bright because it's dark.
We could be sitting in the bush for days. 2, Briggs ain't the type of man to walk into an ambush unprepared.
Man, I love my boys, dude. I mean, they delivered, you know? It's remarkable that
We ain't hunting nobody.
I don't know that you realize, again, I started as an actor, and like, if you have a small role or you're a day player, like, it's hard to have that substance and that gravitas. Like, you show up and, like, you're on screen and present with a 3-dimensional character. And they did. You know, you love Big Mike and Boots in the sense of, like, you really know who they are and you remember them.
What do we need that for?
It's good firewood.
It was on someone's grave.
So?
It belongs to someone.
Nothing.
I'm pausing. As you can tell, I'm not a man that lacks words. But Nick and I talked about this scene, and
Shelter, clothes, family.
he adds this. I'm going to wait for it.
But the dead have already been tended to. Once they're put in the ground, they have all they need. They're not selfish. I like the dead.
They're not selfish. I like the dead. Nick and I were talking about this scene that night, and what it means for Colton, and it's very esoteric and weird, to be honest, in the sense of, like, you're kind of getting to know who he is. And he's like, Brett, I want to say I like the dead. And I was like, do it, man. Just do it. And I kept it because in the scope of the storytelling, it's pretty interesting. Because again, what's the theme? I was born dead inside. I like the dead, and he can't feel emotion. Again, pounding the point, right? What's this pounding the point of? Is that he doesn't have emotion. And it's why it's so tragic and so surreal and so profound that both his daughter and him, because she is from his loin, obviously, she is his daughter, chip off the old block, if you will. She doesn't have emotion. And by the end of the film, they found that. You can't say I love you and give up your life unless you've found emotion, right? So I think that is a true transcendence, if you will.
Y'all look like dog shit.
I need you rested for when Briggs gets here or you're no use to me.
Understand? And ladies, I assume you're well rested. I am in need of your services.
You heard him. Who wants first watch?
I mean, you know, again, I'm just going to say what comes to mind. So the actress I should have had that day, right, is Maria. And she wasn't there. Nobody knows, but I do. Every time I see that scene, I'm like, why isn't she on the front porch of that? And that's, as a creator, you know, you see all the flaws or you see the things that are missing and what's missing.
The marshal said he used to kill people.
I love this scene. It is literally one of my favorites. Why? Not just the performance, but I think the transition of these characters and their honesty and their vulnerability to each other. I think that if, in essence, if I had to say why I make this movie, it's because of this scene. Like, for a father and daughter to find themselves in each other and be this kind of broken and honest.
Is that true?
Mr. Cage, when he came to set the first, well, not set, but when he first arrived on location, you know, he came to do the wardrobe fitting. And this was the scene before wardrobe. He's like, you know what, Brett, let's talk about this. And he sat down. I mean, listen, you talk about a professional? He's like, Brett, come here. He pulls me in the back room and he sits down and he does this monologue. This monologue.
Mother always said I didn't cry as a baby.
Now, why did he do that? Because he wanted to talk through the beats of this monologue and make some changes. And because he knew that this, as I'm saying, is the pivotal turn of this character and the reason for this movie existing, really. because Briggs is able to tell his daughter about who he is.
They were scared, and I'd watch them. I got pretty good at
Isn't it a good question? Is this the first time he realizes that? Did it take the death of his wife for him to come to this conclusion? Does it take drinking at the campfire with his daughter? You know what I mean? Like, that's why this scene's so powerful.
That's when I realized I had never known fear. My whole life, I'd seen fear in the eyes of every man I ever met. Come to expect it. Grown men, terrified when they had no reason to be.
Even that revelatory moment right there. You know, I realized I didn't have fear in my eyes, but like, did he really know that at that time, or did he know it here? Now, why am I saying that to you, viewer, listener? I'm saying it because this is what creatives do, right? This is why we make movies. I want to know and understand the three-dimensional character of Colton Briggs, and then I want to capture that the best way possible, collaborating with Mr. Nicolas Cage to put that on screen, and then have that elevated to a place that transcends kind of reality, so that you're like, whoa, you're moved and you're transcended. So then you're watching it and you're like, whoa, that's me.
And then I shot him dead.
I think that's what we all watch movies for, right? To escape and
Beg for his life.
have moments of truth and emotion. I love movies, guys. I love them. And I feel really
Recognize
fortunate to live the life I live.
the point where I could use it against them. I can honestly say I had no idea what it actually felt like. It was as if I'd been born dead inside. But I didn't care. 'Cause I was dead inside.
So this also is at the Story Ranch. This location happens to be about 100 yards from the ambush scene, around the back of those cliff face. And I found this kind of cool area where they have the cliff face. Obviously, it's a lot darker, but we used a really cool map box. And like, you know, I was telling Sion, we talked about
Something I never felt before.
like trying to set up the intimacy so that even the flame is real, but we also have light, right? That's interacting with them.
To me, fierce you wouldn't.
And I wanted mediums and tights, man. I didn't want anything else. I just wanted us to be so present.
Fear of losing her. She was the only thing I ever feared. And the only thing I ever loved.
I probably mentioned this earlier, but
When they told me Mom was dead, I didn't know how to feel.
this movie, you know, stands or fails from the performance of
Is that how
Brooke.
you felt?
I felt pain.
And why is that? Well, A,
Part of me was
because she, of course, is acting opposite Mr. Nicolas Cage, but also because if we don't believe her, we don't buy her, we don't have some authentic relation with this character of Brooke, the whole movie, well, sucks.
It was as if I died.
And this is that revelatory moment of her confessing.
I was lost. I was lying in my bed, in my room, in our house.
I love this struggle because originally Ryan, she started to head toward crying. I'm like, no, 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 no. Just pull that back, man. You can't cry. You know what I mean? Like, feel that struggle and that pain. And I feel it so much listening and watching her. Like, she doesn't know what emotion is and she can't figure it out. And here is that transformation of like, okay, now I'm Colton Briggs.
James McAllister.
now I'm gonna lose my emotion and I'm gonna like go on this path with my father and seek revenge.
Can you teach me how to shoot? Good.
And I think this is one of the many scenes, like, we're covering up, like, so much ambient sound. You know, I mean, this is all shot literally in Montana. That particular, as I said, was the Story Ranch. So you're out there and you've got animals and crickets, and I've got a generator throughout that scene. By the way, yeah, I actually just remembered, like, I'm trying to cover up a generator, and you're out in the middle of nowhere. The generator's as far as the Jenny can run, like, I don't know, 80 to 100 yards. But, like, you hear it. So again, it goes into what I'm talking about in filmmaking is like, you don't really necessarily understand what goes into it. Like you're in the middle of nowhere shooting these two actors, and then at the end of the day, you're like, wait, I hear a mechanical engine in the background, and there's nothing you can do about it. And then maybe you didn't hear it when you watched this movie, and I hope you didn't, because that's the point. Is like you sit with your sound engineers and you try to EQ it out and add ambient sound and add the crickets and et cetera, et cetera. For those of you that don't know and want to know, it's a pretty interesting process when you're going through the sound design, because there is nothing that you hear that hasn't been designed and or laid into the movie, including the dialogue. It's recorded separately and then synced. I hate ADR. I tell all my guys, I refuse to do ADR. There is some in this movie. It's one of those things when I watch movies, it stands out so much to me. I'm like, oh my God, that is like not cool. But in the concept of overall creating the film, like you're coming up with the design of the music and the palette and the sound design. The sound design includes everything from ambient sound to also just interesting. Obviously, this is a Western. We didn't use much of that, but, you know, the MIDI sounds and stuff that you create to establish a mood.
Boys, come on down.
So this is something I would love to tell you that was very difficult in the making of this movie, part 5,251. So Carl's script, when I read it, I was like, oh my God, I love it. I need you to change the third act to tonight, like the Unforgiven ending, the famous Clint Eastwood when he comes into town. I was like, how can we not have this at night when the revenge is manifest? And of course, Carl says, you know, Brett, that was in the original screenplay because that's epic and awesome. I said, I'm sure it was. And the last guys that were trying to make this movie, they put it into daylight for budgetary reasons. And I said, yeah, I don't blame them. But this is really what I want artistically. I would love to have rain.
You wouldn't be lying to me, would you?
And I'd love to shoot in the dark.
I mean, I might have.
Now, we're not going to go into that story here. If you know me personally, then you can call me later. But this film was very difficult. And by difficult, I mean the hardest movie I've ever made in my life. It started out with a lot more days than I wound up getting. But the point is that the days that I had planned for were cut midstream, if you will. So imagine that you fill up your gas tank and it's full and you're traveling from Dallas to LA, and along the journey, or obviously not Dallas to LA, but Dallas to San Francisco or whatever, and then along the journey you're told, oh, by the way, you only actually have a quarter tank. So it's that kind of experience, if you will. So I planned originally for 20, I think I had 22 days, and then I pulled it down to 20, and then day 16, I think, they told me they're going to pull 2 days out. Now, you can imagine those conversations, and I can articulate. So we had some fun moments, but the point of that being is I had to figure out, because I'm planning and designing, and have already designed, and I'm actualizing my plan. So the end of the movie is in the dark. And the point that I've now talked too long for it, and we're going to come back to that, but the interior scenes in the saloon were shot for night.
your head up.
And then I'm going to explain that when we come back. So this is the same city, of course, that we open in the opening of the movie. And then we redecorate it for Santa Rosa. Now, so we built all that. We added the entryway, etc. And the day before this, we have some major storm that comes through that prevents the production designer and her team to like do all that. So yet again, another side story of how difficult movie making is, because they didn't have the time or the prep necessary because of the storm that came in to even get that done. And I buy it and I like it. It's all good.
Young lady.
Pardon my manners, you must have caught my daydream and almost forgot why I came in here. My mama got in her head yesterday that she had to bake a cake for
Again, maybe you've laughed at this and you didn't realize the subtext and understanding of what it means, but if you don't know, someone that is autistic or someone that is in the spectrum, they are obviously of, you could say, genius like intellect, and they obviously, some of them and many of my friends and the people that I know, like, they're kind of autotron. So they learn and then they react. And remember, what does Colton say to her? You have to learn this when she gets off the horse and fakes cries, right? So you have to learn and adapt and act like you can understand emotion. And that's why that scene is both funny and profound, because she recites a speech she heard once, right? Many days ago in the Mercantile. And so that's the depth of that. And again, a further layer of understanding of who Brooke is as a character. Because she actually doesn't listen to her dad, who's told her what to say. She just walks in and is like, wait a minute, what am I going to say? And then she just recites this like from rote memory, which is profound. So back to the scene, of course, and that's Maria, my lovely Maria. And she should have been on the porch, which I said earlier, but that is yet again one of those issues of the AD team. No offense.
I suspect she's too scared.
But so what you're watching here, right? This scene was shot for night because it was supposed to be night. And so what I had to do is color balance at the end of the day. And God bless, man, Sion and my colorist, whose name will come back to me very shortly, because at the end of the day, it's not an easy thing to do that. Like, you can only push, even though obviously, all right, so that's a whole other thing, I'll tell you. This is 231 anamorphic, which has to be, right? It's a Western. Another thing about the color, obviously, in the color palette is the fact that I wanted to kind of also give homage to the Technicolor. If you remember, there was black and white and Technicolor came, and then there was just these bright colors. So I wanted to not take us out. I always say, like, I don't want the camera to take you out. I want it to accentuate and only make sure that it is showing us or showcasing what we're supposed to be watching. And by the way, having said that, Tony Scott is one of my favorite directors, and I want to make those movies where it's fast and frenetic, and we're altering the color spectrum because we're like doing the inverse of the negative. I mean, that stuff is like so badass to me, but I think every film needs to be told in the manner that it should be told. And from my perspective, because this is my movie, I wanted to do more of the homage. So like, as you see here, by the way, this is the first start of when we start crunching the color. But in the opening of the movie, it's kind of very bright and vibrant. It's a Renault, it's a Pollock, it's like an artist tapestry. And Sion and I talked about that, and Sion's like, all right. And then he just shoots these beautiful photographs. And then toward the end, I had already planned, but it certainly helped me. But I already planned that we're going to start crunching it down, basically, which is like the contrast starts to crunch and the blacks become darker is what that means. And it becomes more intense because it obviously is heading toward a climax, which is more intense. Again, what did I say? We start wide, and then I wanted to go into that funnel. The funnel is everything coming together toward the end. So it helped me a little bit because, again, this scene, as I'm sitting in this studio, obviously the light's on. So, but I I've seen it so many times. But like I had to balance these interior saloon scenes because they were shot at night. And so basically I sat with the guys and we would put windows. And by the way, in a big budget movie, I'm just being honest with you, that would be done in special effects. But I had already asked my favor of my very good friend who did the special effects on this movie to do me a favor, because I want to say I had 268 visual effects shots. And in the real world, I mean, do we talk money here? Do we want to go there? 268 shots, guys, could be like $300,000. I mean, it just depends. And I think that's conservative. It depends on your budget. And that's kind of how people price. But he did this for obviously much less, is my point. And so when we got to this, I was like talking to my colorist, and I was like, dude, can we please fix this in color? Because I can't ask my boy to spend hours upon hours upon hours of replacing windows in all these scenes.
He got him his horse?
And you know what? He did. He did. I think that so far, now that I've told you this, you'll see it. And you'll be like, oh, I see it now. But in general, for the audiences that I've shown it to, they've never noticed. And it is generally that way. And if you want to go into the psyche of a crazy artist like that, all artists are like, oh my God, they're going to see this. But no one does. I mean, let's be honest. And I think that's also why I care so much about the acting, because you'll forgive all my mistakes, of which there are many as a human and as an artist, if you buy the acting and you invest in the story, right?
We don't need those boys getting any ideas about running off with money. Used to be, you couldn't find nothing around these parts except tequila. Finding whiskey in Santa Rosa is progress.
So again, as a comparative analysis, right?
See, the problem with progress is that something
every time you move the camera, it's a different setup. And in general, the big studio movies, right? They might shoot a page and a half, maybe 2 pages a day. Yeah. On an indie film, like, now that I think about it, what is this?
Necessary.
That's
why we're here today.
Yeah, we're doing 5.5, 6 pages a day on this show. I just did the math. See, I love the iPhone. Isn't it great? So that's a lot, guys. That's television. And when you're making a theatrical film, you don't want it to look like television. At least I don't. And what does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. It means you need more setups. You need more coverage, because the more coverage you have, the more immersed you are into the scene. And it doesn't feel like a soap opera, or it doesn't feel like episodic television, which has changed a lot. And why has it changed? Because the streamers have given more money and more time for people to make more theatrical experiences. That started early on with HBO and FX. And I mean, we won't go into that, but I guess I will. I came to LA as an actor, and then I wound up being a lit agent, and I ran a top lit agency in Beverly Hills that did television. So I watched that progression and that transformation in our business of kind of just mediocre TV. And then suddenly, you're dealing with HBO that's like suddenly making things that are just like revolutionary, in the sense that it's theatrical experience. And what gives you that is literally time and money is everything, but like it gives you that experience and the ability to have multiple setups so that you can build the story correctly. So as an indie guy, I, unfortunately for my crew, I work them hard, but I warn them ahead of time. I'm like, guys, man, like, I'm sorry, but like, this is what we're going to do. And what allows me to do that, to be perfectly honest, is that I've been blessed to have worn many hats. So I have a very definitive opinion when I come in. I believe the performance. I like the costume. I like everything, or I don't, period. And on general, I never go more than 4 takes. 4 is my lucky number, and on average in my movies, it is take 4, because the first take, it's the guy getting it out of the way or the girl getting it out of the way. The second take is a note. The third take is theirs, and 4th is mine, generally speaking. Statistically, I've actually looked at it. It's pretty accurate. Not to say I won't go 20 takes, because I'm going to go until I believe the performance. But my point is more is that I'm efficient and I'm quick. So I react and I work in a television manner, but for the purpose of capturing a theatrical experience.
Not disappointed.
I kid all the time. I'm like, can you imagine if somebody gave me $100 million and I had a whole week to shoot a scene? I don't think I could do it. Honestly, I honestly don't. Actually, funny anecdote. Ryan was showing me American Horror Story. I went to the opening of that. I went to her house, right, to watch the premiere. And I watched the first couple scenes, and I look at her and Dean. I'm like, they shot that over 4 days, didn't they? And they look at me, and they're like, how'd you know that? I won't tell now because who knows who's listening to this, why I know that. But I said I can just tell. And she looks at me. She's like, Brett, you would have done that in the morning. And I thought that was sweet and cool and actually true. I don't think that I don't personally want that as an artist to be working that fast. But the point is, like, if you're prepared for that, then certainly you could take your time and actually get more performance. But to that end, I think I will. I'm debating. Do I tell you the secret?
Circle back.
I mean, you've made it this far. If you've made it this far, and it's not just my mother,
I got him. He got booted.
then the 10 of you listening, I will.
I only winged him, but I got a bullet in him, sure as shit.
The impossibility of this movie, and what almost put me in the grave, and I'm not exaggerating, is, as I said to you earlier, they took 2 days away from me. Now, what does that mean? It means that the entire ending of this movie, that's supposed to be over 2.5 days of my shooting schedule, I shoot in 12 hours.
I'll double your pay if you bring him out alive.
So
Be careful now.
that is a secret. It's not something that I'm going to say to the press, but if you're listening to this commentary, I'm telling you that I pulled a third body off of the truck and I had 3 cameras. And I also want to tell this secret here in this commentary because this cast stepped up. I said to everyone that morning, I said, look, this is what's happened. The powers that be have pulled my days, and I now have to do 2.5 days in a day. And by the way, we're going to do it. I need your help. And none of them could have been more gracious and kind, including Mr. Cage, who's like for the first time cracking jokes on set and like lighting my mood. And he's like, you know what, bro, we got this. We're going to do this. And so we ran through that day, bro. And like we had 3 cameras and it was like film school 101. It was like Rodriguez, like Rebel Without a Crew, man, like in Mexico with no money, like running around like crazy men. And staying true as much as possible, of course, to the plan, because I had one, but compromising here and there and then worrying even to this day, right? Wow, I had another freaking fucking 50 shots, you know what I mean? So, no, I didn't get those. And again, I share this in humility and honesty because that's indie filmmaking, right? I feel that the opening of the movie is certainly representative of my perfect plan because it's exactly what I planned. And the very end of the movie is the compromise of the reality of filmmaking and then put together in such a fashion with, of course, the amazing Frederick Wardell, who I love. Shout out to him, my editor, who I've made 10 movies with and who loves me because of my insanity and my total honesty, which I only share partially with you because it's normally a little more direct than even this, but he always will look at me and laugh. Okay, Brett, I'll do that, you know? So Fred and I work well together, but he's an amazing editor, and it's because of him, of course, and
Every time I close my
our diligence to put together the ending of this movie that, again, was always planned. I'm not making that up. Like, I always planned it to go wide to narrow. But even within the narrow, I had more shots, right? Like in my mind and what was was projected and planned was just a little more sophisticated, if you will.
Little girl.
But we live with it, and I'm proud. And again, it goes back to what I'm saying. You didn't know that unless you're hearing this. And you don't care if you like the movie, and you don't care if you don't, for certain. so again, like, that's the thing. Like, artists that get a little too high horse on themselves sometimes and be like, oh, it's like, I don't, you know. At the end of the day, you got to be honest and have your integrity as an artist, and then kind of go on to the next thing. I feel bad sometimes for people that are a little too precious, right?
You kill me. Watch a little girl die. Or save your daughter. And watch me take your place.
Brooke, I have all I need. See that I'm tended to. And I love you.
I hear that build, Brooke. I have all I need. See that I'm tended to. I love you, right? That to me is the culmination of the entire movie and why I made it. Because a man that had no emotion, who changed for the love of his wife, that's our journey, right? He fell in love with his daughter. Of course, in a fatherly way, as I would with my daughters. But what I'm saying is he found that emotion. And I have everything I need, because I can't live without my wife. And now I've realized that we've come close enough, and I'm here to protect you, and I know I'm probably going to die because I'm not the gunslinger I once was. And boom. The apple has fallen, and there's Miss Briggs, the junior.
You're the monster.
You're no kin.
That's a whole nother thing. Like, I love that. Like, the whole McAllister monologue in the saloon. You know, I mean, the hardest part of filmmaking is the editorial process, as we were saying earlier. Like, you're trying to find the rhythm and the beats and, like, the emotional context and, like, what information do you need that you can't live without? I love this moment. Are you kidding me? This is the moment where we see that that's what he's been looking at. You think he's looking at the time? No. Mama wouldn't like that. Well, that's who he's looking to find his inspiration. And here we are. And again, how profound is she as an actress? Because you believe her, you know? Like, she's been so stoic and introverted, and here she finds her tears. And why? Because of the death of her stoic father.
You alive?
So as I was saying, I was just saying that I love the McAllister speeches inside. They were double the length for each of those scenes in the screenplay. Like, oh, by the way, that is, that's me, guys. Corporal Lawrence, which is kind of cool. I try to at least play a cameo in the movies I make. It's funny the number of times I watched this movie with my friends.
Marshall.
And then I tell them at the end that I was me, and they're like, no, what?
What are you going to tell them?
Another anecdotal, only here on the commentary for The Old Way by Brett Donahue. Do you hear?
Tell them how.
And I'm not kidding. I had a vision when I was young that I'd make a movie and that I was like on a horse. And why do I say that? Is because follow your heart and follow your dreams. I tell people all the time, as I've said to my kids, I don't care if you're a bus driver, I don't care what you do, just follow your path that is in your heart. And I say it because that was my path. It is my path, and it's not a path that is easy, and I certainly beat to my own drum, as all my friends will tell you. I'm a little outside of the box, but I did have a vision of me being on this horse, and I'm like, I remember being that day on the horse. I'm like, wait, this is weird. Like, I remember that vision when I was like 23. Again, not about me. It's about you, because you can do it.
You and your daddy came along and you
especially now, man. Have you seen that iPhone 14? You could shoot a whole entire feature on that thing.
And then he was killed in the process of their apprehension.
What else I want to say before this ends as we come to the ending?
Since the outcomes
Not that any of the crew or cast would listen to this, but I just thank each and every one of them for putting up with my insanity and coming together to fulfill this vision. And I hope that each and every one of you that are listening enjoyed this film and got something out of it. And maybe in the course of this random off-the-cuff commentary, you learned something you didn't know. Movie making is so hard and yet rewarding. Like I think most things are in life if you follow your passion. Yeah. Life isn't easy, but at the end of the day, hopefully you have something you're proud of, whether that's your family or your art.
Did you find your horse?
Tied up at the edge of town.
Again, all of the ending of this movie, I haven't actually counted the minutes, shot in one day.
You get on home, little Briggs.
And the impossibility of that, and the reason I share it is because it is impossible. It's a miracle. I mean, you're running around this town like a madman with 3 cameras trying to get real performances, and you've planned to do it in 3 days? You know what I mean? So I'm thankful. Again, I'm sincere. Like, I'm thankful to this crew because they hung in and rallied around, including these actors, to like bring up these performances that in a studio movie, this is a whole day. A whole day, guys. This right here is one whole day of shooting. And this was probably an hour
Maria,
for me.
Si, señorita. Why don't you fetch me my brother's saddlebag from inside the saloon? I best begin.
This is a whole other thing. I debated the ending of this movie so much. I had this whole other thing planned that I didn't shoot, and I was actually going to go reshoot it on my own dime. But after Andrew's score and this amazing swell of a moment of realization and the slowdown here, we had to slow that down right there, right? Now, we did that for dramatic effect, but also I'd ran out of film because, of course, I just said that was only an hour. And I was like, all right, I think we're good. Just for the sake of telling you, I was going to have her riding off in the deep valley in the distance, like with a drone starting on the handlebar of that money and then pulling up as she rides away, which I think still would be cool. But I'm satisfied with that ending. I hope you are too. This is our amazing crew. Shout out to everyone here. As I said, Dale was the rock star and Cody with our horses. Appreciative of each and every one of them. And that is the truth, man. It takes a village. You don't realize, I think. I always sit there, especially in those big movies, man. Like, you sit there and watch thousands of people come across. I mean, look at that, right? You got Sion Michel, my DP, is also a camera operator. That's not always the case. He is an amazing A camera operator, but on a big movie, he would never do that. He'd be sitting next to me at all times. And so that's what's so awesome and I appreciate so much, is to kind of like push that envelope and try to make, you know, that's what we do in indie world. We're trying to make a big movie for no money and in a short amount of time so that someone can enjoy it. But it's not even about all that. It's just hopefully at the end of the day, you get to enjoy your art. Assistant to the director, Brooke and Brielle Donahue. I love you. Those are my 2 daughters. And as we discussed, the inspiration for me even wanting to do this, Farrah West. I shout out to her once again because she's an amazing cast director and she really did sit with me hours on end on the phone trying to help me get this perfect cast, which hopefully you agree was accomplished. Yeah, Bradley. I'm sorry, Bradley. I forgot your name. I might have said Brad earlier, but Kyoto Color and Nola, Bradley, and Sion and I were the ones sitting there for days fixing and perfecting the color on this. Jack and his brother Levon are the masters that were able to give me $300,000 worth of visual effects. Andrew Morgan Smith, my composer, the Budapest Symphony Orchestra. Thank you. I lived in Budapest for 2 years, as I might have already said, and I'm so thankful that we could get them to do this score. Well, I guess that's about it. I hope you're not too bored listening. If you're still listening, then I guess you weren't. I hope you're well, and I hope you follow your heart and make your art and your passion. All right? Thanks, guys. I appreciate you.